Don't we'll manage. Yeah, we'll manage. Take it. Lord sitting. Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Vihari Jai Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Jai Giri Badadhari Jai Giri Badadhari Jai Giri Badadhari Jai Giri Badadhari Jashodanandana Jai Brajajana Ranjana Jai Brajajana Ranjana Jai Brajajana Ranjana Jai Brajajana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jai Kunjabi Hari Jai Jamuna Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka-acharya Ashtadhara Suśarmā Abhayacharana Aravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Pratishtha Acharya Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Navadip Dham Ki Grantrad Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Nitai Gaur Siddhanata Brahmanande Bande aham Shri Guru Shri Juta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Shagadajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vidang Tang Sajivam Sadaitam Savadutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shibishakam Vidangshta Mantra Guru Ajota Shik Guru Ganta Charane Yage Kori Abandon Panchaka Patrubhyashta Krapashanna Bebaja Patitanam Pavaneba Vaishnava Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Samate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Idinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudamani Prachane Nirvishesha Shandavali Paschatta Deshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Ādyaiḥ Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Paramanya Matsananam Satam Atra Vashta Shivanantapa Trai Unmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Kute King Vaipada Eshara Sadaridi Avaruddhate Atra Kriti Vishushushibitakshanat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya yad-doḥṣu praṇihitam guru-bhīṣma-karṇa. Naptṛ trigarta Śalya saindhava ādyaiḥ. astrāṇy amogha-mahimāni nirūpitāni. nopaspṛśuḥ nṛhari-dāsam ivāsurāṇi. yad-doḥṣu praṇihitam guru-bhīṣma-karṇa. naptṛ trigarta Śalya saindhava Bāhlika ādyaiḥ. astrāṇy amogha-mahimāni nirūpitāni. nopaspṛśuḥ nṛhari-dāsam ivāsurāṇi. Please chant. Matrimandali. Yat, under whose? Doḥṣu, protection of arms. praṇihitam, myself being situated. Guru, Droṇācārya, Bhīṣma-karṇa, naptṛ, Bhūriśravā, trigarta, King Suśarmā, Śalya, saindhava, King Jayadratha, Bāhlika, brother of Mahārāja Śāntanu, Bhishma's father, ādyaiḥ, etc., astrāṇi, weapons, amogha, invincible, mahimāni, very powerful, nirūpitāni, applied, not, upaspṛśuḥ, touched, nṛhari-dāsam, is nṛhari-dāsam. Servitor of Nṛsiṁhadeva, Prahlāda. Like asurāṇi, weapons employed by the demons. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Prabhupada. Great generals like Bhishma, Droṇācārya, Bhūriśravā, Suśarmā, Śalya, Jayadratha and Bāhlika all directed their invincible weapons against me, but by His, Lord Krishna's, grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Arjuna. Similarly, Prahlāda Mahārāja, the supreme devotee of Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Purport. The history of Prahlāda Mahārāja, the great devotee of Nṛsiṁhadeva, is narrated in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlāda Mahārāja, a small child of only 5 years, became the object of envy for his great father, Hiranyakashipu, only because of his becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. The demon father employed all his weapons to kill the devotee son, Prahlāda, but by the grace of the Lord, he was saved from all sorts of dangerous actions by his father. He was thrown in a fire, in boiling oil, from the top of a hill, underneath the legs of an elephant, and he was administered poison. At last, the father himself took up the chopper to kill his son. And thus, Nṛsiṁhadeva appeared and killed the heinous father in the presence of the son. Thus, no one can kill the devotee of the Lord. Similarly, Arjuna was also saved by the Lord, although all dangerous weapons were employed by his great opponents like Bhīṣma. Karna, Prabhupada will give elaborate details. Born of Kunti by the sun god prior to her marriage with Mahārāja Pandit, Karna took his birth with bangles and earrings, extraordinary signs for an undaunted hero. Just a comment, in generations to come, there will be students that will do PhD studies on Srila Prabhupada's poetic Bhagavatam purports. Read that again. Karna took his birth with bangles and earrings, extraordinary signs for an undaunted hero. Such poetry. Prabhupada ki. In the beginning, his name was Bashushena, but when he grew up, he presented his natural bangles and earrings to Indradev, and thenceforward, he became known as Vaikartana. After his birth from the maiden Kunti, he was thrown in the Ganges. Later he was picked up by Jayadratha, and he and his wife Radha brought him up as their own offspring. Karna was very charitable, especially toward the Brahmins. There was nothing he could not spare for a Brahmin. In the same charitable spirit, he gave in charity his natural bangles and earrings to Indradev, who, being very much satisfied with him, gave him in return a great weapon called Shakti. He was admitted as one of the students of Droṇācārya, and from the very beginning there was some rivalry between him and Arjuna. Seeing his constant rivalry with Arjuna, Duryodhana picked him up as his companion, and this gradually grew into greater intimacy. He was also present in the great assembly of Draupadi's Swayamvar function, and when he attempted to exhibit his talent in that meeting, Draupadi's brother declared that Karna could not take part in the competition because of his being the son of a Sudra carpenter. Although he was refused in the competition, still, when Arjuna was successful in piercing the fish target on the ceiling, and Draupadi bestowed her garland upon Arjuna, Karna and the other disappointed princes offered an unusual stumbling block to Arjuna while he was leaving with Draupadi. Specifically, Karna fought with him very valiantly, but all of them were defeated by Arjuna. Duryodhana was very much pleased with Karna because of his constant rivalry with Arjuna. When he was in power, he enthroned Karna in the state of Anga. Being baffled in his attempt to win Draupadi, Karna advised Duryodhana to attack Drupad, for after defeating him, both Arjuna and Draupadi could be arrested. But Droṇācārya rebuked them for this conspiracy, and they refrained from this action. Karna was defeated many times, not only by Arjuna, but also by Bhīma. He was the king of the kingdom of Bengal, Orissa, and Madras combined. Later on, he took an active part in the Rajasuya sacrifice of Mahārāja Yudhishthira. And when there was a gambling between the rival brothers designed by Shakuni, Karna took part in the game. And he was very pleased when Draupadi was offered as a bet in the gambling. This fed his old grudge. When Draupadi was in the game and he was very enthusiastic to declare the news, and it was he who ordered Dushashan to take away the garments of both the Pandavas and Draupadi. He asked Draupadi to select another husband because, lost by the Pandavas, she was rendered a slave of the Kurus. He was always an enemy of the Pandavas, and whenever there was an opportunity, he tried to curb them by all means. During the battle of Kurukshetra, he foresaw the conclusive result, and he expressed his opinion that, due to Lord Krishna's being the chariot driver of Arjuna, the battle should be won by Arjuna. He always differed with Bhishma, and sometimes he was proud enough to say that within 5 days he could finish up the Pandavas if Bhishma would not interfere with his plans of action. But he was much mortified when Bhishma died. He killed Ghatotkacha with the Shakti weapon obtained from Indradev. His son, Bhrishasena, was killed by Arjuna. He killed the largest number of Pandava soldiers. At last there was a severe fight with Arjuna, and it was he only who was able to knock off the helmet of Arjuna. But it so happened that the wheel of his chariot stuck in the battlefield mud, and when he got down to set the wheel right, Arjuna took the opportunity and killed him, although he requested Arjuna not to do so. Naptṛ, or Bhūriśravā, Srila Prabhupada elaborates. Bhūriśravā was the son of Somadatta, a member of the Kuru family. His other brother was Śalya. Both the brothers and the father attended the Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi. All of them appreciated the wonderful strength of Arjuna due to his being a devotee friend of the Lord. And thus, Bhūriśravā advised the sons of Jayadratha not to pick any quarrel or fight with them. All of them also attended the Rajasuya Yajna of Mahārāja Yudhishthira. He possessed one Akshohini regiment of army, cavalry, elephants and chariots, and all of these were employed in the battle of Kurukshetra on behalf of Duryodhana's party. He was counted by Bhima as one of the Jutapatis. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he was especially engaged in a fight with Satyaki, and he killed 10 sons of Satyaki. Later on, Arjuna cut off his hands, and he was ultimately killed by Satyaki. Later, after his death, he merged into the existence of Vasudeva. Trigarta, or Suśarmā, the son of Mahārāja Bridhakshetra. He was the king of Trigarta Desh, and he was also present in the Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi. He was one of the allies of Duryodhana, and he advised Duryodhana to attack Matsya Desh, Darbhanga. During the time of cow stealing in the Virat Nagar, he was able to arrest Mahārāja Virat, but later Mahārāja Virat was released by Bhima. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he also fought very valiantly, but at the end he was killed by Arjuna. Jayadratha, another son of Mahārāja Bridhakshetra. He was the king of Sindhu Desh, modern Sindh, Pakistan. His wife's name was Dushala. He was also present in the Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi, and he desired very strongly to have her hand, but he failed in the competition. But since then, he always sought the opportunity to get in touch with Draupadi. When he was going to marry in the Śalya Desh on the way to Kamyavan, he happened to see Draupadi again, and he was too much attracted to her. The Pandavas and Draupadi were then in exile after losing their empire in gambling, and Jayadratha thought it wise to send news to Draupadi in an illicit manner through Koti Shasha, one of his associates. Draupadi at once refused vehemently the proposal of Jayadratha, but being so much attracted by the beauty of Draupadi, he tried to take her away forcibly on his chariot. And at first Draupadi gave him a good dashing, and he fell like a cut root tree, but he was not discouraged. He was able to force Draupadi to sit on the chariot. This incident was seen by Dhaumya Muni, and he strongly protested the action of Jayadratha. Dhaumya Muni, he also followed the chariot. And through Datrayika, the matter was brought to the notice of Mahārāja Yudhisthira. The Pandavas then attacked the soldiers of Jayadratha and beat him very severely, almost dead. Then all but 5 hairs were cut off his head, and he was taken to all the kings and introduced as the slave of Mahārāja Yudhisthira. He was forced to admit himself to be the slave of Mahārāja Yudhisthira before all the princely order. We'll come back to that. I'll finish the purport. Mahārāja Yudhisthira was kind enough to order him released, and when he admitted to being a tributary prince under Mahārāja Yudhisthira, Queen Draupadi also desired his release. After this incident, he was allowed to return to his country. Being so insulted, he went to Gangotri in the Himalayas, and undertook a severe type of penance to please Lord Shiva. He asked his benediction to defeat all the Pandavas, at least at one time. Jayadratha. Then the battle of Kurukshetra began, and he took sides with Duryodhana. In the first day's fight, he was engaged with Mahārāja Drupad, then with Virat, and then with Abhimanyu. While Abhimanyu was being killed mercilessly, surrounded by 7 great generals, the Pandavas came to his help, but Jayadratha, by the mercy of Lord Shiva, repulsed them, and with great ability. At this, Arjuna took a vow to kill him. On hearing this, Jayadratha wanted to leave the warfield and asked permission from the Kauravas for this cowardly action, but he was not allowed to do so. On the contrary, he was obliged to fight with Arjuna. And while the fight was going on, Lord Krishna reminded Arjuna that the benediction of Shiva upon Jayadratha was that whoever would cause his head to fall on the ground would die at once. He therefore advised Arjuna to throw the head of Jayadratha directly onto the lap of his father, who was engaged in penance at the Samanta Panchak pilgrimage. This was actually done by Arjuna. Jayadratha's father was surprised to see a severed head on his lap. He at once threw it on the ground. The father immediately died, his forehead being cracked in 7 pieces. Srila Prabhupada ki. Mukam kardi bachalam bhangam langai tegidim chat kripatam aham bandai shri gurum dinatarinam. They put Jayadratha at the very rear, of all of the Kaurava Akshauhini divisions on that day. He wanted to take leave of absence, not permitted. Coward. You cannot. Even Yudhisthira, he accepted the gambling, the challenge in the gambling match because it's Kshatriya Dharma. You cannot refuse a challenge on the warfield or in chess. It's Kshatriya Dharma. So he had to Yudhisthira had to. So this Jayadratha, he wanted to excuse himself. No, you have to. Better you fight, better you're killed by Arjuna than you be known as a coward for the rest of your living days. For one who is honored, dishonor is worse than death. Gita-upadesh. So he was they put him at the very end, at the very backside, just so that logistically it would be impossible for Arjuna to reach him. There's a wonderful description, Krishna on the chariot, and literally they're carving through the phalanxes of the Kaurava army. and it was so exhausting for the horses, and that Krishna, he created a whole oasis in the middle of the battlefield for Arjuna's horses to rest and drink water and then carry on carving their way through the Akshauhini divisions. And then it was getting there toward the end of the day, I believe this was what happened. And the Kauravas were thinking, he won't make it, he's too far away, he won't make it. And then, by the arrangement of Lord Krishna, it appeared that the sun had set. It appeared that the sun had set. And then they were all cheering and related, because Arjuna had said, if I do not kill Jayadratha tomorrow, I will enter fire. And the Kauravas were all thinking, this is it, Arjuna will have to enter fire. That's it, they're finished. The Pandavas are finished with Arjuna. And they're all cheering, and they relaxed their protection of Jayadratha. And then all of a sudden the sun appeared again. And Krishna ordered Arjuna, release your arrow. Whoosh, whoosh, and whoosh, severed the head of Jayadratha. And such a special arrow, the head didn't just fall off the chariot, whoosh, propelled miles and miles over the mountain to the other place. It must have been a long distance because his father was doing meditation, so obviously it was not close to the battlefield. We come to Mayapur for bhajan sadhan, but there's so much construction noise. So you need quiet, peaceful place for bhajan sadhan. And then they were astonished. This is an example of Lord Krishna's specific intervention. It's not by the prowess of Arjuna. Lord Krishna, Yai bhajanti tamam bhakta mayite teshu cha api aham. Yai bhajanti tamam bhakta. Those who become my devotee, mayite, they're always thinking of me. Teshu cha api aham. I am always thinking of them. Prabhupada translates that as I become their friend. I become their bhaktoshi me shakacheti rahasyam hi etad uttam. You can understand because you are my friend. You're my devotee. And actually Krishna, he bestows so much mercy, so much, he becomes a friend. He becomes a friend. And for his friend, he does favors. So he reigns in the sun. The Kshatriya Dharma, we're just considering as I was reading this, that he was ordered, the Jayadratha was ordered to go before all of the kings and announce himself as the slave of Mahārāja Yudhisthira. I mean, what humiliation. The Kshatriya Dharma is so degraded in the modern age. It's so degraded. The antitheses of Kshatriya Dharma, that the executive leaders of the state, they stand there and they blatantly lie. They blatantly lie. And they don't care. They don't think there's any Dharma as a Kshatriya. The words of the Kshatriya. Bhishma, as he stood before the assembly of the kings, I make this vow. I will break the thighs of Duryodhana. I will tear open the chest of Dushashan. I will drink his blood. I will tear his heart. I will tear off his arms. If I do not fulfill this, I make this vow before the assembly of princes. If I do not fulfill this vow, my forefathers will not be able to enter the higher realms. The words, I give you my word. Now we say, I give you my word. It's meaningless. I give you my word. Who cares? Oh, I changed. Circumstances changed. Prabhu. Kshatriya would die to fulfill their words. Even Krishna, he's Kshatriya bhav. Konteya pratijanihi nami bhakta pranashi. You declare it. Because I will ensure that your words will certainly come true. So konteya pratijanihi. You declare it, konteya. Because it's more important for me to fulfill the words of my devotee than even my own vow. So the words of the Kshatriyas. So I find this purport very interesting. The first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is a prelude. It's actually a prelude to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole first canto. It's a prelude. In that Shukdev Goswami, the actual speaker of the Bhagavatam, he begins speaking in the second canto, Shukdev Goswami. So actually first canto is a prelude. And it's very fascinating when the sages assemble at Naimisharanya and they elect Shuta Goswami as their advisor and offer him a seat of esteem. Because he had heard from Shukdev Goswami. He was present when Shukdev Goswami recited the Bhagavat to Parikshit Maharaj. And for that reason, Sutta Goswami was elected by the sages to answer the questions. What can be done for the what is the highest dharma? Buddhini sharvani shrotavyani vibhagashaha atha shadhu trayat sharam samudrita manishaya bruhi bhadraya bhutanam yanatma supraśur. Oh sadhu, Taryat Sharam, you tell us what is the essence of all scriptures. Taryat Sharam, Srotavyani Vibhagashaha, Buddhini Karmani, there's so many Buddhini Karmani. There's so many instructions in the revealed scriptures. Atha Shadhu Taryat Sharam. Oh Sadhu, you please tell us what is the cream, what is the essence of all of those scriptures. Bruhi Bhadraya Bhutanam Yenatma Suprasiditi. That by you Buhi Bhadraya, you tell us Bhutanam Yenatma Suprasiditi, that which by all living beings can get Atma Suprasiditi, complete satisfaction of the soul, complete satisfaction of the self. And Sutta Goswami explains, Savai Punksha Paradharmo Jato Bhakti Yad-doḥṣu, devotion to the transcendent Lord. And he explains how that devotion can be attained, that Nashta praye shiva badr nitam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati noishtiki bhaktir bhavati noishtiki. That irrevocable devotion to the Lord is invoked, it is established by bhagavat seva. Nitam bhagavat sevaya. Nitam bhagavat sevaya. Which is our movement. Prabhupada describes the two types of bhagavata. The bhakti bhagavata, the person bhagavat, and the granta bhagavat. And these are our prime activities in our movement. We serve the person bhagavata in the preaching mission of Krishna consciousness. And we serve the bhagavata by daily hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. One time I was in Melbourne, Mahaprabhu Mandir, in the 1980s, and Sri Tamal Krishna Goswami was giving a seminar in the evening on Upadeshamrit. And we were leaving for Sankirtan that last day, and so we were missing the last evening session. So I requested His Holiness, could you kindly give the Upadeshamritas class in the morning during the Bhagavatam? And he, no. The Bhagavatam can never be replaced. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in the temple can never be replaced. So we're Bhagavat Sevaya, we're serving the mission of the Mahabhagavata. we just came back from the opening of Ultadanga Junction project, and we're begging. We're begging the assembled Vaishnavas, as in the words of His Holiness Lokanath Swami, that a must visit place for all preachers of Krishna consciousness. A must visit. There's so much spiritual power, so much spiritual potency in the room. Devashi Sribash was also present for that program. We could feel that the tremendous spiritual potency in that place, which was almost lost to humanity. The contractors had purchased, or I think they were, but not purchased, but they were trying to purchase. They were trying to get the people out. One mad person was there. Radha Raman Prabhu was saying that mad person did such a service because they couldn't remove that person, and they couldn't get the permission to completely demolish that building. And so we just heard about it. And we were able to capture that building. We were able to capture that building and renovate it almost completely to the condition that it was 100 years ago. And you will go there, you'll see the room. It's a small room where Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur the founder of the Gaudiya Math mission, where he predominantly his preaching was done while he was residing in that room. He resided there for 12 years. And Bhagbazar temple a few years, 2-3 years, and then he left. But the predominant Leela of him spreading Krishna consciousness all over Bharat Bhumi, 64, was done when he was residing in that room. We have that room, and we have his deity. It's a tremendously powerful deity. He's sitting there. A tall figure, he's sitting there. And the place where the momentous historical meeting, where Srila Prabhupada first met Sri Thakur. Such a special place. So surcharged with spiritual potency. Where that meeting is the cause of the world revolution. If that meeting, if Narendra Malik had not, if Prabhupada had, I mean, what can we say? But Prabhupada was not planning to. He was not planning these things. Although Gomahan Day was chanting on his Japamala, reading Srimad Bhagavatam and reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, this vision was implanted. Prabhupada sometimes would say, my father was a pure devotee, and I learned everything about Radha Krishna bhajan from my father, but preaching I learned from my guru. That place. In the first meeting, Prabhupada says, before I even had come up from paying obeisances and taken my seat, he ordered me. You're an educated young man. You preach the Gauravani in English language all over the world. Sridhanta Saraswati Thakur ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Such a special place. You have to go to that place. You have to roll in the dust on the roof of Ultadanga. That every room so charged with spiritual potency. And simultaneously, Prabhupada's birthplace has also appeared now, after 100 years, 125 years. It also was almost lost. And how we had to start, even the chief minister, we give respect to the chief minister, Mamata Banerjee, who personally got involved in helping ISKCON acquire those property and those vested land. No one could sell, no one could buy. And occupied. And we occupied is this big area we have at Prabhupada's birthplace. And we are getting more. They're willing, it's amazing to see these things. Although I'm here in India, based in India, for 25 years, the first time I visited Prabhupada's birthplace. Yeah. It's such a special place. And we got some of the dust. And Ishwarapuri, Mahaprabhu, he collected the dust from the birthplace of Srila Ishwarapuri Prabhupada, and he considered that his greatest possession. Srila Prabhupada ki. So this first canto, it describes this, after explaining this hearing and chanting, which was given by Shukdev Goswami to Pariksit, this Bhagavatam, he mentions, he's answering the question, he says Bhagavatam. Sutta Goswami says Bhagavatam. Idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma-sangitam. This Bhagavatam, which was spoken. And so then the sages inquire, in the 4th chapter of Canto 1, the sages inquire, from where did Vyasa Muni get the inspiration to write Srimad Bhagavatam? And that's described, and then that ends in the 7th chapter, and then Sutta Goswami begins narrating the events which occurred immediately after the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, from chapter 8 to the end of the 1st canto, beginning with prayers of Queen Kunti, that Krishna had completed his mission. He'd come from Dwaraka, and he had engaged with the Pandavas in the Battle of Kurukshetra, and he had, and the miscreant opponents were defeated and destroyed, and Krishna also fulfilled his mission, vinashaya chaduskritam, of removing the burden on the earth of the unscrupulous Kshatriya class. He removed them all. They were giving so much burden on the earth. They were all removed at the Battle of Kurukshetra. They were killing each other. He arranged them all to gather on the battlefield, kill each other. The burden, the great burden of the earth was removed. Yudhishthira was installed as the emperor of the world. And Lord Krishna was returning to Dwarka. And he was prevented by Kunti Maharani, who prayed, Kunti Pratana, Prabhupada particularly appreciated and spoke on 2 occasions extensively, here in Mayapur and in Los Angeles, Kunti Prarthana. So Lord Krishna decided to stay. From 8th chapter onwards, 1st canto, is Krishna and the Pandavas. Kunti Maharani's prayers. Yudhishthira requests Krishna to stay a few days more. He decides to stay to support Yudhishthira and to give solace to Subhadra, who had lost Abhimanyu. And then they all travel, Bhishma-dev's departure, 9th chapter, they travel to the departure of Bhishma-dev. Lord Krishna is there, the Pandavas are there. And then Vidura comes back, delivers Dhritarashtra, and Krishna returns to Dwarka. Vidura comes back, delivers Dhritarashtra, chapter 13, 14, Mahatma Vidura. And now the Pandavas are retiring. The Pandavas retire timely, chapter 15. And then we'll hear, this is all answering the question. It's all, Sutta Goswami is answering the question, how did the great king Parikshit end up on the bank of the Ganga, fasting until death, hearing from Shukdev Goswami? How did those circumstances come about? That was the question of the sages in the beginning of the 4th chapter of Canto 1. And Sutta Goswami is answering that from chapter 7 to chapter 19. He's in order to answer how Parikshit ended up on the bank of the Ganga to hear from Sukadeva Goswami, the grandson of, yes, the grandson of Yudhishthira, Parikshit, the grandson of Arjuna, Parikshit, the grandson, son of Abhimanyu. Yeah. So how did Parikshit, the heir of the Pandava dynasty, how did he end up on the bank of the Ganga fasting till death? So in order to answer that, Sutta Goswami begins from the end of the battle of Kurukshetra. And how everything had eventually, Emperor Yudhishthira became the emperor. And then the Pandavas, Krishna is not mentioned, not described, but Krishna departs. The Pandavas are retiring. Parikshit is installed on the throne. Then he's cursed by the Brahmin, etc. So it's very fascinating that there's so much of Krishna Lila in the 1st canto. Krishna Lila, which we don't find in 2nd canto all the way up to 9th canto. Krishna Lila in the 1st canto. And what type of Krishna Lila? It's actually Dwarkadish Lila. Vasudev Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. Now, Krishna explains that in Gita Paritrāṇaya Sadhunam, I come to deliver the devotees, Vinashaya Duskritam, Dharma Sangstapanataya, and to establish the Dharma, but actually that's not doesn't happen in Vrindavan. Because in Vrindavan they don't even think he's God. Kevala Shuddha Prema Aishajya na jane, Aishajya dekliyo nija shambonda shemane. Even he displays his opulence, Aishajya dekliyo. He kills the demons, he displays the universal form in his mouth. Aishajya dekliyo nija shambonda shemane. They're only thinking of their intimate relationship with him. Momentarily, Ma Jasoda, she thinks, wow. My child opens his mouth, I see the universal form. How many